Hello out there in distance learning land. I hope you're all doing well, staying healthy and happy. We are now starting a new chapter in social studies. This is chapter 14, A Divided Nation, and we're going to be looking today at section 1, the debate over slavery. Now we have 4 main ideas in this section. The addition of new land in the West renewed disputes over the expansion of slavery. The Compromise of 1850 tried to solve the disputes over slavery. The Fugitive Slave Act caused more controversy. And finally, the abolitionists used anti-slavery literature to promote opposition. The big idea was anti-slavery literature, and the annexation of new lands intensified the debate over slavery. The United States added more than 500,000 square miles of land as a result of winning the Mexican-American War in 1848. The additional land caused bitter debate over slavery. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 had divided the Louisiana Purchase into either free or slave regions. It prohibited slavery north of latitude 3630, but it let Missouri become a slave state. In the 1840s, President James K. Polk wanted to extend this 3630 line to the west coast, dividing the Mexican cession into 2 parts, one free and one enslaved. Now, some leaders, including Senator Lewis Cass of Michigan, encouraged, and we've talked about this term before, popular sovereignty, the idea that political power belongs to the people who should decide on banning or allowing slavery. There were regional differences about slavery, though. Some Northerners wanted to outlaw slavery in all parts of the Mexican cession. During the war, Representative David Wilmot offered the Wilmot Proviso, a document stating that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall ever exist in any of the territory. Let's take a break here and look at this picture. I love this map because on the east side, you see 2 different sections of our country. In the north, you have the northern free states. They had 30 senators. But look down in the south. The green represents southern slave states. And guess what? They also had 30 senators. So what is going to happen over here on the west? The admission of California could upset the balance of power in the Senate because California would be entering with 2 new senators. The Northern-controlled House passed the document, but in the Senate, the South had more power. The Wilmot Proviso did not pass. Now, before this time, politicians had usually supported the ideas of their political parties. However, the Wilmot Proviso spurred a debate that showed growing sectionalism, or favoring the interest of one section or region over the interest of the entire country. To attract voters, the Democrats and the Whigs did not take a clear position on slavery in the presidential campaign of 1848. In response, anti-slavery Northerners formed a new party, the Free Soil Party, which supported the Wilmot Proviso. They worried that slave labor would mean fewer jobs for white workers. Party members chose former President, I think you might remember this name, Martin Van Buren, as their candidate. The new party won 10% of the popular vote, drawing away votes from Democrat Lewis Cass. Whig candidate Zachary Taylor won a narrow victory. Oh, now we're into the California question. The California gold rush caused such rapid population growth that California applied to join the Union as a state instead of as a territory. But would California enter the Union as a free state or a slave state? Most Californians opposed slavery, which had been illegal when the state was part of Mexico. Also, many 49ers had come from free states. But if California became a free state, the balance between free and slave states would change, favoring the free states. In the South, an imbalance was unacceptable. We are about permanently to destroy the balance of power between the sections, said Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi. He and many other Southerners did not want California to enter the Union as a free state. This was a very important compromise, known as the Compromise of 1850. Senator Henry Clay of Kentucky had helped to settle the Missouri crisis of 1819-20 and the nullification crisis of 1832-33 by proposing compromises. He now had another plan to help the nation maintain peace. His ideas were designed to give both sides things they wanted. That's what a compromise is all about. The first one, California would enter the Union as a free state. The rest of the Mexican cession would be federal land. In this territory, popular sovereignty would decide on slavery. Texas would give up land east of the upper Rio Grande, and in return, the government would pay Texas debts from when it was an independent republic. The slave trade, but not slavery, would end in the nation's capital. And the fifth one, a more effective fugitive slave law, would be passed. Now, Clay's plan drew attack, especially regarding California. Senator William Seward of New York defended anti-slavery views and wanted California admitted directly, without conditions, without qualifications, and without compromise. However, Senator John C. Calhoun of South California argued that letting California enter as a free state would destroy the nation's balance. He warned people of issues that would later start the Civil War. Calhoun asked that the slave states be allowed to separate and part in peace. Now, in your textbook on page 440, you will see a picture where you have Henry Clay introducing the Compromise of 1850 on the Senate floor. Sitting right behind him is Daniel Webster, who spoke eloquently in support of the compromise. And way over on the right, you will see John C. Calhoun. He was weak and near death. He had his speech in support of slavery read to the Senate for him. Now, in contrast, Senator Daniel Webster of Massachusetts favored Clay's plan. He said, "I wish to speak today, not as a Massachusetts man, nor as a Northern man, but as an American. I speak today for the preservation of the Union. Hear me for my case." This is a very famous speech. It was called the 7th of March speech. In it he said, "I hear with distress and anguish the word secession. Secession. Peaceable secession. Sir, your eyes and mine are never destined to see the miracle. The dismemberment, taking apart of this vast country without convulsion, the breaking up of the fountains of the great deep without roughing the surface. Who is so foolish, I beg everybody's pardon, as to expect to see any such thing? There can be no such thing as peaceable secession." And he went on to criticize Northern abolitionists and Southerners who talked of secession. With the Compromise of 1850, California was able to enter the Union as a free state. The rest of the Mexican secession was divided into two territories, Utah and New Mexico, where the question of whether to allow slavery would be decided by popular sovereignty. Texas agreed to give up its land claims in New Mexico in exchange for financial aid from the federal government. The compromise outlawed the slave trade and in the District of Columbia and also established a new fugitive law. Now, this leads us to the Fugitive Slave Act. The newly passed Fugitive Slave Act made it a crime to help runaway slaves, and it allowed officials to arrest those slaves in free states. Slaveholders were permitted to take suspected fugitives to U.S. commissioners who sadly decided their fate. Slaveholders could use testimony from white witnesses, but enslaved African Americans accused of being fugitives could not testify. nor could people who hid or helped a runaway slave. And you know what? They faced 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Commissioners who rejected a slaveholder's claim earned $5, while those who returned suspected fugitives to slaveholders, they earned $10. Clearly, the commissioners benefited from helping slaveholders. There were reactions to the Fugitive Slave Act. Enforcement of the act began immediately. In September 1850, the same month the law was passed, federal marshals arrested African-American James Hamlet. They returned him to a slaveholder in Maryland, although he had lived in New York City for 3 years. Thousands of Northern African Americans fled to Canada in fear. In the 10 years after the Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, some 343 Fugitive Slave Acts were reviewed. The accused fugitives were declared free in only 11 cases. Now, this act upset Northerners who were uncomfortable with the commissioner's power. Northerners disliked the idea of a trial without a jury. They also disapproved of commissioners' higher fees for returning slaves. Most were horrified that some free African Americans had been captured and sent to the South. Most Northerners opposed to the act peacefully resisted, but violence did erupt. In 1854, Anthony Burns, a Virginia fugitive slave, was arrested in Boston. Abolitionists used force while trying to rescue him from jail, and they killed a deputy marshal. A federal ship was ordered to return Burns to Virginia after his trial. Many people in the North, particularly in Massachusetts, were outraged. The event persuaded many to join the abolitionist cause. On page 442, you'll see a picture of a fugitive slave convention. To protest the new law, they held many meetings to publicly denounce it. There were about 2,000 people, including many former slaves, who attended this convention. They listened to speeches, made plans, and raised their voices for freedom. But listen to this. Not only were whites allowed to mix with African Americans, women and men were allowed to mix as well. This angered many people. It was anti-slavery literature. Abolitionists in the North used the stories of fugitive slaves like James Hamlet and Anthony Burns to gain sympathy for their cause. Slave narratives also educated people about their hardships. Fiction also informed people about the evils of slavery. Uncle Tom's Cabin, the anti-slavery novel written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, spoke out powerfully against slavery. And I think I mispronounced her name. It's Harriet Beecher Stowe. Now, Stowe was the daughter of Connecticut minister Lyman Beecher, and she moved to Ohio when she was 21. There she met fugitive slaves and learned about the cruelties of slavery, and supposedly said to Stowe that she was the little lady who made this big war. As we're ending now, section 1, I want you to take a look at the timeline. It's at the very beginning of this chapter, and you can find that on page 435. In conclusion, the United States experienced increasing disagreement over the issue of slavery. The Compromise of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act tried to address these disagreements with legislation. Now, in the next chapter, you will read about another disputed law concerning slavery, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the violence it sparked. This will be independent reading for you. I hope you've enjoyed this. Good luck this week in your endeavors in Chapter 14. I'll see you later. Have a great day.